immortality or a future life, he sung it unusually loud, thinking he should thus comfort her in her sorrow for her deceased husband. He desired Mrs Bradshaw to pay her every attention she could, and even once remarked that he thought her so respectable a young person that he should not object to her being asked to tea the next time Mr and Miss Benson came. He added that he thought, indeed, Benson had looked last Sunday as if he rather hoped to get an invitation, and it was right to encourage the ministers, and to show them respect, even though their salaries were small. The only thing against this Mrs Denbigh was the circumstance of her having married too early, and without any provision for a family. Though Ruth pleaded delicacy of health, and declined accompanying Mr and Miss Benson on their visit to Mr Bradshaw, she still preserved her place in his esteem, and Miss Benson had to call a little upon her talent for fiction, to spare Ruth from the infliction of further presents, in making which his love of patronising delighted. The yellow and crimson leaves came floating down on the still October air. November followed, bleak and dreary. It was more cheerful when the earth put on her beautiful robe of white, which covered up all the grey naked stems, and loaded the leaves of the hollies and evergreens, each with its burden of feathery snow. When Ruth sat down to languor and sadness, Miss Benson trotted upstairs, and rummaged up every article of spare or worn-out clothing, bringing down a variety of strange materials. She tried to interest Ruth in making them up into garments for the poor; but, though Ruth's fingers flew through the work, she still sighed with thought and remembrance. Miss Benson was at first disappointed, and then she was angry. When she heard the low long sigh, and saw the dreamy eyes filling with glittering tears, she would say, "What is the matter, Ruth?" in a half reproachful tone, for the sight of suffering was painful to her. She had done all in her power to remedy it; and though she acknowledged a cause beyond her reach for Ruth's deep sorrow, and in fact loved and respected her all the more for these manifestations of grief, yet at the time they irritated her. Then Ruth would snatch up the dropped work, and stitch away with drooping eyes, from which the hot tears fell fast. And Miss Benson was then angry with herself, not yet at all inclined to agree with Sally when she asked her mistress why she kept mithering the poor lass with asking her for ever what was the matter, as if she did not know well enough. Some element of harmony was wanting, some little angel of peace, in loving whom all hearts and natures should be drawn together, and their discords hushed. The earth was still hiding her guilty front with innocent snow, when a little baby was laid by the side of the pale white mother. It was a boy. Beforehand she had wished for a girl, as being less likely to feel the want of a father, as being what a mother, worse than widowed, could most effectually shelter. But now she did not think or remember this. What it was, she would not have exchanged for a wilderness of girls. It was her own, her darling, her individual baby, already, though not an hour old, separate and sole in her heart, strangely filling up its measure with love and peace, and even hope. For here was a new, pure, beautiful, innocent life, which she fondly imagined, in that early passion of maternal love, she could guard from every touch of corrupting sin by ever watchful and most tender care. And her mother had thought the same, most probably, and thousands of others think the same, and pray to God to purify and cleanse their souls, that they may be fit guardians for their little children. Oh, how Ruth prayed, even while she was yet too weak to speak, and how she felt the beauty and significance of the words, "Our Father." She was roused from this holy abstraction by the sound of Miss Benson's voice. It was very much as if she had been crying. "Look, Ruth," it said softly. "My brother sends you these. They are the first snowdrops in the garden." And she put them on the pillow by Ruth. The baby lay on the opposite side. "Won't you look at him?" said Ruth. "He is so pretty." Miss Benson had a strange reluctance to see him. To Ruth, in spite of all that had come and gone, she was reconciled; nay more, she was deeply attached; but over the baby there hung a cloud of shame and disgrace. Poor little creature! Her heart was closed against it, firmly, as she thought. But she could not resist Ruth's low, faint voice, nor her pleading eyes, and she went round to peep at him as he lay on his mother's arm, as yet his shield and guard. "Sally says he will have black hair, she thinks," said Ruth. "His little hand is quite a man's already. Just feel how firmly he closes it." And with her own weak fingers she opened his little red fist, and taking Miss Benson's reluctant hand, placed one of her fingers in his grasp. That baby touch called out her love. The doors of her heart were thrown open wide for the little infant to go in and take possession. "Ah, my darling!" said Ruth, falling back, weak and weary, "if God will but spare you to me, never mother did more than I will. I have done you a grievous wrong, but, if I may live, I will spend my life in serving you." "And in serving God," said Miss Benson, with tears in her eyes. "You must not make him into an idol, or God will, perhaps, punish you through him." A pang of affright shot through Ruth's heart at these words. Had she already sinned and made her child into an idol, and was there punishment already in store for her through him? But then the internal voice whispered that God was our Father, and that He knew our frame, and knew how natural was the first outburst of a mother's love. So, although she treasured up the warning, she ceased to affright herself for what had already gushed forth. "Now go to sleep, Ruth," said Miss Benson, kissing her, and darkening the room. But Ruth could not sleep. If her heavy eyes closed, she opened them again with a start, for sleep seemed to be an enemy stealing from her the consciousness of being a mother. That one thought excluded all remembrance and all anticipation in those first hours of delight. But soon remembrance and anticipation came. There was the natural want of the person who alone could take an interest similar in kind, though not in amount, to the mother's, and sadness grew like a giant in the still watches of the night, when she remembered that there would be no father to guide and strengthen the child, and place him in a favourable position for fighting the hard battle of life. She hoped and believed that no one would know the sin of his parents, and that the struggle might be spared to him. But a father's powerful care and mighty guidance would never be his. And then, in those hours of spiritual purification, came the wonder and the doubt of how far the real father would be the one to whom, with her desire of heaven for her child, whatever might become of herself, she would wish to entrust him. Slight speeches, telling of a selfish worldly nature, unnoticed at the time, came back upon her ear, having a new significance. They told of a low standard, of impatient self-indulgence, of no acknowledgment of things spiritual and heavenly. Even while this examination was forced upon her, by the new spirit of maternity that had entered into her and made her child's welfare supreme, she hated and reproached herself for the necessity there seemed upon her of examining and judging the absent father of her child. And so the compelling presence that had taken possession of her wearied her into a kind of feverish slumber, in which she dreamed that the innocent babe that